Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I have a very spicy cross-verse matchup for you guys. That being the Blue Blur himself, Sonic the Hedgehog, running up against Shinra Bancho Man from the Fire Force manga. I think this is interesting. I haven't seen anybody post this on any platform other than maybe TikTok. Maybe there's a short format video out there somewhere, but I'm not really interested in that. So I'm going to start off with the Shinra scaling because I feel Shinra should be talked before the new guy, Sonic, who I am going to go more in depth at the end of the video, especially considering I have more things to talk about involving Sonic. Now, for Shinra, we know that he scales above the likes of Hanwha fused with the Evangelist, who is basically fusing the normal universe in Adola, which was actually changing the universe in its entirety. You can see the stars and stuff changing. And another part is, you could argue that's a little multiversal, sure, but you could also argue that Shinra is 5D because Adola is a higher dimension, and the Evangelist was fusing this while he was basically bullying her. She couldn't do shit to him. It was actually pretty funny when you think about it. But yes, we know that Shinra should scale stuff like that. He scales to faster and light due to his being able to react to light speed attacks pretty easily. And before this, he was able to move faster and light and go back in time due to the laws of the physics of the verse. Some people like to say immeasurable speed, but if you actually read the Fire Force manga, it explains this to you. But if you want to use that as a higher end, go ahead. It doesn't really matter for this video. For higher ends, you could actually get Shinra to low out reversal if you want to use the statements of Adola containing things like mathematics, dimensions, and whatnot. The issue with this is that that's all bound by human perception, and it doesn't actually scale to infinite dimensions. I can't imagine a normal human perceiving infinite dimensions like that. Not just that, but we know that concepts of Adola are fake, so yeah, I can't really use them in scaling, but you can definitely use the higher dimensional arguments. In other words, Shinra can get to like low complex multiversal with to faster and light, depends on your interpretation. You argue at measurable speed if you want, or you can get into low out reversal to a measurable, maybe irrelevant speed. He also has some really impressive hacks like being able to interact with concepts like death and alter it, as well as bring people back to life, reality warping, and he even managed to completely delete the concept of despair after separating it from Hanwha. Now the real issue is when we get into the Sonic scaling. If you want to get into Sonic, then you have to get into the cosmology first. In a book known as Sonic the Hedgehog in the Fourth Dimension, we know they mention things like quantum space-time as well as transfinite numbers. Quantum space-time being an infinite dimensional construct is pretty insane to start off for Sonic, but it gets even crazier if you believe it. We have things like Jungian archetypal concepts, and that is where things like start to really go off, as if a high hyperversal construct wasn't enough, but hey. Jungian archetypes are basically universal patterns, motives, and images that are inherited from the collective unconscious of all human beings. Archetypes like these are beyond all categories of numbers, space-time, and in the book of Jung itself, it mentions transfinite cardinalities and sets of all infinities are mentioned, putting things like these archetypes beyond those infinities, and the collective unconscious itself is basically the matrix of all metaphysical statements, which means that all metaphysical ideas and concepts the collective unconscious of these is basically the source of. And we actually have interviews confirming things like Jungian archetypes existing in Sonic.
Capture the power of a dolphin, dragon, or a rocket were inspired by famed psychologist Carl Jung.
One of his ideas was that we create personas or archetypes psychologically, and I always wanted to use that in a game.
We had numerous different ideas that we proposed for having a flying character, but the team members really liked the idea of setting the game inside of a dream world. Once we decided to go with a dream world, what we wanted to do was something that wouldn't just be some kind of fantastical dream, but more representative of actual dreams that people might have at night. I read a lot of books and other literature about dreams and the deep psyche in order to learn how to faithfully create an actual dream. There are a lot of books out there by experts. The primary foundation I used was the work of Carl Jung, but I referenced the works of several people who had done proper scientific research on the topic of dreams.
The fact that we also have things like the astral plane, as well as confirmation that stuff like that is metaphysical, heaven and hell, other things like that, you can argue Neoplatonism also exists in the verse, which would make Sonic outerversal to high outerversal in its cosmology depending on your interpretation. And you must be wondering, why the fuck does this matter to the Blue Blur himself? And that is because of this big motherfucker called Solaris, a super dimensional being. Super dimensional essentially means he's above the entire cosmology. He's transcendental to it and is more than capable of destroying everything. This asshole was so fucking powerful that Supersonic could not defeat him alone, and he actually called on the strength of his allies Shadow and Silver, and they fought him all across time. I'm not joking. Literally, Solaris was existing in several layers of time. He was existing in the past, present, and future, all at the same time. And they were basically fucking jumping and boxing him up, and they eventually win the fight. Now, obviously, Sonic was weaker than Solaris in that game, but later on, he meets a character named Infinite. And from what I remember, Infinite kind of dicked him in their first fights, but later on, he actually manages to defeat Infinite in his base form, and this is because it's confirmed that Sonic is literally getting stronger by the second. He even defeats the Death Egg robot, a creation more powerful than Infinite, meaning that Sonic would scale to the super dimensional being Solaris in base form. In other words, you got like outerversal to high outerversal Sonic with irrelevant speed right there. In other words, you can argue that he's most likely just going to resist all of Shinra's hacks abilities via his higher dimensional powers, stuff like that, yada yada. Personally, I think he's just speedless as the absolute dog shit out of him. I know I did say that Shinra would probably get a more fair fight, but guess what? I lied. Ishigo versus Shinra is going to take a while, so that's why I'm doing this. And because I want to advertise that I'm doing live streams, me and my friend are going to talk about Gilgamesh versus Sonic real soon. I don't know shit about Fate, so he's the Fate guy, and I'm introducing him to the Sonic stuff. And this is like surface level Sonic stuff. This is like video games. I haven't touched Archie Sonic yet. So maybe things will get even crazier over time with Sonic scaling for me, so look out for that. Like and subscribe, and I hope everybody has a good day.